The story begins in a house filled with birds chirping. With her short hair tucked behind her ears, the protagonist struggles in frustration, trying to start a fire in the cold. She shifts on the hard floor, adjusting her position with a rustle. She holds a blowpipe, exhaling into it to ignite the wood. Eventually, the wood catches fire, crackling loudly. An Irori with a hanging chain warms the room as a kettle simmers nearby, filling the air with warm steam. She feels relieved as the house heats up. Harumi-kun, the lead male character, reminisces about his childhood friend returning from Tokyo to their hometown approximately 2 weeks ago. It's a mountainous village with a gentle stream beside it. The closest train station is unstaffed, without any buses or convenience stores in the vicinity. After her grandmother's passing, his friend decided to relocate to the empty house. He is currently heading to his friend's house, holding a bag in his hands. He appears down, not because he dislikes the town, but because he feels living here is somewhat wasteful. As he knocks on her door, he hears sudden, faint noises from inside, but he can't pinpoint their source. Moments later, he hears footsteps approaching. A girl opens the door, her face lighting up with a wide smile as she greets him with a cheerful good morning. Noticing his solemn expression, she inquires if everything is okay, to which he replies that he's just feeling a little low. She is Alice Minase, his childhood friend whom he hasn't seen in nearly 10 years. When she left, Harumi was still a young child, and despite considering her his childhood friend, there's actually a considerable age gap between them. He reflects that she used to have short hair and a boyish appearance. Upon seeing her, Harumi hands her a bag as a housewarming gift. Surprisingly, she accepts the gift and thanks him graciously. Noticing his messy hair, she teases him about bed hair. He denies it, saying he woke up just half an hour ago. Sensing his hunger, she offers to make him lunch as thanks, but he declines. Undeterred, she insists and invites him in, saying she'll fetch a cushion for him. As he observes her appearance, he initially feels disappointed to see how different she looks now. However, he quickly reassures himself that such changes over 10 years are entirely natural. He enters the room, apologizing for the intrusion, but looks puzzled as he gazes at the Irori, a traditional Japanese sunken hearth. He quickly settles near it, drawn to its warmth. Memories flood back from his childhood visits, recalling how Alice's grandmother used to advise her against lying on the floor like that, citing it as poor manners. She would argue that it was much warmer there, though her grandmother continued to insist on proper etiquette. As he ponders, Alice interrupts him, carrying a tray in her hands and noticing his fascination with the Irori. She asks if he remembers it, to which he admits remembering it a little, particularly the lingering smell of smoke since it's been so long. She laughs, noting it's the one thing he remembers about the Irori. She sits next to him, gripping the Irori with a holding rod. When he asked about the effort required to maintain it, she agrees but shares her lifelong fondness for it, wanting to give it another try. Seeing her determination, he begins to wrap a bandana around his head to assist her, but he takes it off in frustration when Alice tells him to focus on work rather than talk. He remains uncertain whether she will use the Irori, but she begins preparing a dish by carefully using tongs to select larger pieces of charcoal from the firewood, which emit a sharp, crackling sound. Once she gathers enough charcoal, she quickly places it in a designated spot and covers it with a net. She advises him to handle it carefully because it's very hot and will darken immediately once removed from the heat. With great enthusiasm, she adds an extra thick piece of bacon she'd had bought the day before. After seeing all the steps, he is impressed by how delicious it looks, yet remains uncertain if she truly knows how to cook it. He is puzzled by the setup, finding it different from what he imagined. Sensing his concern, she reassures him that the food looks delicious, so there's nothing to worry about. Pleased by Harumi's reaction, she listens to the sizzle of grilling meat in the background. They assemble the bacon with vegetables and lightly toast the French bread. While the bacon grills, they chop scallions and prepare the tartar sauce. Soon, their charcoal grilled sandwich and green tea are ready. Alice takes the first bite with a wide smile, looking impressed by its deliciousness. Juicy and crispy at the same time. As they enjoy their sandwiches, Harumi agrees with Alice, finding the food exceptional. The charcoal grilling enhances the smoky aroma, creates a smooth texture, and makes the bread perfectly crisp outside and soft inside. Amazed yet puzzled, he wonders how simply toasting the bread could make the sandwich taste so delicious. Seeking an answer, he watches Alice carefully blow on her tea to cool it before taking a sip. As he observes her, she exhales and catches him staring at her with a flushed face. He feels embarrassed for staring, but Alice blushes too and asks if she has something on her face. With an anxious look, he immediately denies it. Time passes quickly as it's already past 2. After finishing her meal, Alice quickly lies down, folding a pillow under her head for comfort. A few minutes later, Harumi returns, rubbing his hands together due to the cold, finding her asleep. Upon his arrival, Alice wakes up, and he teases her about sleeping right after eating, joking that she might grow a couple of sizes. She laughs at his comment and thanks him for washing the dishes while she slept, though he insists it was the least he could do to help. Sitting in front of the irori, he asks if she doesn't have hot water yet. She understands how tough it can be to wash things with cold water. Harumi finds himself yawning uncontrollably due to the warmth, making him sleepy. Alice reminds him that he used to say the same thing often, even in their childhood, about how warm it is here. She smiles, blushing slightly with relief to hear him say it again. He blushes in return but starts sipping his tea without paying much attention to her. He gazes at the suspension chain, contemplating how much has changed since those days. Despite all the changes, he feels the same comforting warmth around the fire where she sits, making him drowsy. Alice interrupts his thoughts, reminding him how he used to sleep on her lap as a child. Surprised, he recalls the memory. She playfully asks if he wants to do it again, while he sighs, reflecting on those days 10 years ago. The next day, Harumi visits and cuts some wood for Alice, leaving the rest on the ground for later. Using a handcart, he transports it, and she expresses gratitude for his help. Confidently holding an axe, she informs him that she will now chop the wood to prepare the irori. Placing it on the larger piece left on the ground, she begins chopping. With his hands in his pockets, he asks if she needs his help. She declines, mentioning she only has one axe and needs to be able to chop up enough wood herself. She playfully suggests that he just stay there and observe her instead. Sitting on the bench with a concerned expression, he asks if she has ever chopped wood before. She shakes her head and explains, holding an axe in her hands beside a handcart full of wood, that she learned how to chop wood by looking it up on the internet, so she's confident she can manage. He exhales, understanding the situation. Alice begins chopping, recalling the steps she learned from the internet. She grips the axe with her left hand and steadies it near the blade with her right, using a band for extra grip, especially useful for women. Positioning herself with one foot forward and her back straight, she swings with determination. Despite following each step, she struggles to even make contact with the wood. Sitting at the ledge, Harumi observes her silently without saying a word. She tries again to chop the wood, following all the steps, and manages to make a slight impact this time. When he offers to help, she declines, insisting on doing it herself. She decides to give it another try but struggles to even make contact with the wood after 10 minutes of effort. Frustrated, she looks at her hands and expresses frustration, feeling an odd sensation as if she can't even feel her hands, due to continuous trays. Seeing her struggle without success, he interrupts with concern, suggesting she might be overdoing it. She denies his suggestion with a sad expression. He adds that chopping wood can be daunting for beginners, warning her that 10 minutes of effort will leave her sore the next day. He wonders aloud if it's just him or if it really is quite hot today. He remarks on her uniqueness, prompting a tired look from her. He explains that after years in Tokyo, she suddenly returned to the countryside and is now even using the irori. Instead of responding directly, she inquires whether he believes this. He further explains that it's not common for women to spend their free time chopping wood. She warily remarks that she supposes so too. As he looks at her, he doesn't say anything further but attempts to encourage her with detailed instructions for another attempt. She looks at him with exhaustion, listening carefully to all his directions. He adds that she should also aim a bit closer to the center of the wood rather than toward the sides as she has been doing. She appears puzzled by how he knows all these details. He mentions that his grandfather has been teaching him since middle school. She playfully grabs him by the collar and scolds him for not sharing these tips earlier. Defending himself from her playful attack, he reminds her that she insisted on doing it herself. She lets go, removes her coat, and tries again, this time following his advice to keep her stance steady. Positioning the axe over the wood, she asks if she's doing it right. He eyes her with concern, pointing out that it's too cold to take off her coat. She grins, saying she's worked up so much enthusiasm that she feels warm despite the chill. Then she finally exhales and grips her axe in her hands. Following his instructions carefully, she avoids swinging the axe down and lets it drop straight, finally splitting the wood into 2 pieces. He looks pleased as she successfully splits the wood. She glances back at him with a thankful expression. He smiles warmly, his eyes acknowledging her gratitude. As she heads inside, she sneezes, indicating she might have caught a cold. Sitting on the bench, she tends to cut her finger, wincing with pain from chopping wood. Upon looking at her, he asks about her hands because today she worked really hard, but she smiles, and despite the lingering sting in her hand, she assures him she's all right. She gazes at the wood where she successfully chopped wood by herself, realizing with a laugh that she'll likely feel sore all over tomorrow. Right now, she feels completely exhausted. Interrupting her musing, he asks if there's anything he can do to help her. She points towards a pot containing a meal she's prepared. Curious about its contents, he asks her what's inside. He opens the lid with a clunk, revealing a hot, appetizing meal. He looks puzzled, wondering when she had the time to cook this food since she had been with him all the while. She playfully informs him that she cooked it before chopping the wood. There are several other pots containing a variety of dishes such as boiled cabbage with tomatoes, curry dishes, boiled flounder, vegetable stew, and more. These dishes demonstrate her versatility in cooking. All of these are prepared using the irori, leveraging its warm ashes and excellent heat retention. The fufu dish is completed by simply adding a touch of sugar and a pinch of salt. In addition to these dishes, they bake mochi as well. Once all the dishes are ready, he sets them on the table, along with chopsticks for her. The spread looks incredibly appetizing. After a hard day, she craves something sweet to enjoy. She expresses gratitude for the meals and joyfully mentions during the prayer before eating, and today she doesn't need to restrain herself. He watches her puzzled, as he doesn't quite grasp its meaning. Ignoring him, she eagerly digs in, making a bit of noise. Though it's hot, she blows on it, but can't wait for it to cool, so she drinks straight from the bowl. Her expression says it all. It's delicious. He found it unusual that she was so focused on chopping wood today, also she could indulge in sweets without worry later on, but she stops him to not think like that. The house feels warmer with the fumes emanating from the irori, and they've also had their meal. Looking at her eat like this, he felt a wave of nostalgia. After finishing their meal, both of them sit outside the house. As Alice rests her hand on her cheek, lost in thought, he asks what's on her mind. She admits she's been thinking about him calling her unusual yesterday. Surprised, he watches as she nods in confirmation. With a somber expression, she explains that returning for her grandmother's funeral after a decade filled her with such nostalgia that she decided to move back without much thought. She'd also wanted to restore the irori. Then, with great surprise, he asked her if she's certain about settling here and using the irori, considering the constant smoke issues whenever she tries to use it, leading to more frequent washing of her clothes, and acknowledging how challenging chopping wood can be. However, she explains that despite the challenges and side effects when lighting the fire, she felt genuinely happy. Splitting the wood also left her feeling accomplished, and the food she prepared in the irori tasted exceptionally delicious. That's why she decided to move here. With a great smile and a blush on her face, she gazes at him and expresses her happiness at being back. After hearing her reason for returning, he remains puzzled and continues to ponder the real motive behind her coming back to this town as he sits beside her. Maybe there are multiple reasons as well, but he doesn't believe a high school student like himself can do much about them. Seeing her genuine smile, he grins, thinking that if she's happy, nothing else matters. He tells her that as long as her happiness is real, that's enough, but playfully adds that she's still quite unusual. The next morning, she wakes up itching all over, unable to get out of bed. On a clear morning, a girl crosses a bridge over a stream. While on the phone, they ask if she managed to ask Harumi out today, to which she replies that she couldn't. The person on the other end expresses disappointment. She nervously admits that she's unsure where to take Harumi for a date because there aren't many options around here. The person on the call suggests not treating it like a date yet, but instead to casually invite him out to dinner after practice. Despite her attempt to say something, she's interrupted with advice not to wear a jersey under her skirt. Standing on the bridge, clutching her shoulder bag and cell phone, she declines, saying she cannot do that. The other person agrees and tries to explain that they simply mean she should be more careful, then warns her not to complain if a cat thief comes and steals him away from her. With her short hair pinned back, she hangs up the call and gazes at the stream, feeling both confused and sad. The concept of a cat burglar seems outdated and unbelievable to her. On the other side, Harumi is on the way to Alice's house carrying a heavy, full white bag. He ponders that no matter how delighted she is with almost anything they give her, he's puzzled about whether she really needs all these things. As he nears her house, he wonders if visiting a woman living alone is appropriate, despite their long childhood friendship. As he approaches the door to ring the bell, he hears a loud crashing sound from inside. Without hesitation and filled with concern for Alice, he rushes into her house to check on her. Upon entering the house, he is shocked to see Alice sprawled on another girl in an unusual manner. Confused, he asks them what happened. Both girls look embarrassed, while the other girl greets him with a warm good morning. As she stands up from beside Alice, they all settle near the irori. She then formally explains the awkward situation. She had brought a housewarming gift, but received no response at the door. Noticing smoke inside, she feared a fire and rushed in, only to find Alice lying on the floor. As she moved to help, Alice suddenly woke up, startling her and causing her to lose balance, resulting in the accidental fall. After hearing the entire story, he scolds Alice, clearly attributing the incident to her negligence. Alice, visibly embarrassed, explains that the warmth of the room had tempted her into taking a nap. She couldn't resist. The girl bows slightly in apology, realizing she had misunderstood when she thought Alice had collapsed due to smoke. Alice quickly raises her hand to stop her, taking responsibility. She apologizes for causing unnecessary worry. Harumi watches both of them with a smile, finding it entertaining. Then the girl sits upright, with both hands resting on her legs, and her school bag beside her. She introduces herself as Akiyama Honoka, a 15-year-old third-year student of middle school. She further mentions that she attends the same karate dojo as Harumi-san. In her reply, Alice introduces herself with a smile, casually remarking about her age and jokingly mentioning that she's quite old. To overcome her own hesitation about age, she shifts the conversation to Honoka's posture, complimenting how straight and poised she looks, which reflects her karate practice. Then she waits for Akiyama's response, but instead of replying, it seems like she's staring at Alice angrily. Feeling her gaze directed towards herself, she whispered nervously to Harumi that Honoka-chan appeared somewhat upset with her, but he dismisses her observation, explaining that Honoka is just naturally shy like that. After hearing him, she wants to trust his words, but when she glances at Honoka again, she notices that she is still staring at her. Her expression leaves no doubt. She is glaring at Alice with intensity, making her feel extremely awkward under her gaze. Continuously sensing her piercing stare, Alice grows increasingly nervous and tense, unsure how to respond. Meanwhile, Honoka abruptly stands up, leaving her confused. She politely asks if she can use the bathroom. Initially shocked by her abrupt movement, Alice quickly recovers and, without hesitation, permits her to use it. She informs her that it's to the left, at the very end. Then she hurriedly grabs her handbag and rushes towards the bathroom. After Honoka leaves, Alice again insists that she's sure Honoka is angry, though he disagrees. As they talk, soft footsteps suddenly catch their attention. Turning around, they spot Honoka hiding behind the glass door, her shadow faintly visible. Hesitantly, she apologizes for keeping them waiting. As she steps out, Alice notices the change and excitedly compliments her for removing her jersey, saying she looks great. Harumi notices that Honoka had been wearing a jersey. Honoka trembles with anger, staying silent as she squeezes herself. She then sits beside Harumi, while Alice remains uneasy, convinced Honoka dislikes her. Harumi asks if she removed her jersey because she was feeling hot, then shifts the topic to the housewarming gift. At his reminder, Honoka exclaims and hurriedly opens her bag with an unusually loud noise, which surprises Harumi since she's typically quiet. Instead of responding, she presents a 1-kilogram piece of wild boar meat as a housewarming gift, mentioning that Grandma Minase took great care of them, so her mother wanted to show gratitude. Seeing the large amount of meat, their eyes widened with excitement. After receiving the gift, Alice suggests having dinner together. Honoka, with an angry expression, is about to refuse, but Harumi agrees, expressing his own interest in having dinner together. He clasps his hands together and asks Alice to cook for them, praising her as a great chef. Upon hearing him, she smiles warmly, takes the meat bowl, and agrees to cook for him. This makes Honoka jealous, and she eagerly announces that she will also gladly accept the invitation. Both of them are puzzled by her sudden outburst, prompting Harumi to say that there's no need to shout. Alice confidently begins cooking, setting up a tripod over the firewood and adjusting the heat by adding wood under its legs as needed. Next, she places a frying pan on top of the tripod, adds some fat, and heats it until it sizzles with the sound of frying. Then she fries the sliced garlic to release its aroma before carefully placing the meat with tongs, slow roasting the wild boar meat. In addition to these ingredients, she adds mixed spices for seasoning and rosemary to enhance the flavor and reduce any unwanted odors. She cooks all the ingredients, continuing to hear the sizzle of frying. Observing the slightly weak fire under the tripod, she hands a bamboo blowpipe to Honoka and requests her assistance in stoking the fire. Honoka appears confused, unsure of how to use it, but Alice reassures her, explaining that it's straightforward. Just hold it close to the wood and blow into the center. While it seems she's hesitant to help, Harumi eagerly offers to blow on the fire, but Alice declines, teasing that he might not be light enough for the task. While listening to their friend's conversation, she feels saddened. Deciding to give it a try herself, she takes the blowpipe, positions it near the wood, and begins blowing as Alice instructed. With a crackling sound, the wood starts to burn. After seeing the fire catch, both Alice and Harumi smile and express their appreciation. Alice thanks her warmly for the help. Then, continuing with the recipe, she advises letting the meat rest for a moment once it's cooked. Then she fries the vegetables in the meat's fat and finishes by lightly frying everything together. Now, it's ready to eat. It looks very appetizing when served with salted cabbage and a generous portion of rice. They begin eating by picking up the meat with their chopsticks and then dipping it into the rice. They express their gratitude for the meal, and Honoka eats with audible enjoyment, finding the sounds appetizing. She comments on the excellent flavor, noting that as one matures into adulthood, one learns to truly appreciate such delicious food, especially when it's prepared by someone like Alice. Alice smiles appreciatively and thanks her for the compliment. The food is so delicious that Honoka can't resist continuing to eat until she finishes her bowl, oblivious to the fact that both of them are watching her. After finishing her meal, she sets the chopsticks down on the empty bowl. She then feels a mix of embarrassment and nervousness, bowing her head with tears in her eyes after eating all the food. To dispel her hesitation, Alice smiles and reassures her that she can eat as much as she likes, mentioning how hungry she must have been. Honoka looks at her with an incredulous expression, feeling hurt by her earlier rudeness. While the two girls chat, Harumi diligently finishes washing the dishes. Upon realizing her behavior, she quickly apologizes to Alice, who doesn't understand why she's apologizing in the first place. With great sorrow, she explains that she had made many incorrect assumptions about her. After hearing her out, Alice sharply reaches towards her shoulder as if to scold her, but then gently places her head on the cushion instead. Honoka's confused by the situation, but Alice assures her that she doesn't need to apologize, commenting about lying down in that spot, mentioning how nice and warm it feels. However, Honoka doesn't respond. There's only the crackling sound of burning wood. Seeing Honoka's expression, Alice laughs softly, knowing that Honoka has fallen asleep in that position. Alice then goes over to Harumi and excitedly remarks that they were just getting to the interesting part. As evening falls, Honoka crosses the bridge again, calling out to the same person. They hesitantly ask if she had dinner with Harumi-senpai. She confirms, prompting excitement as they assume Honoka finally found the courage. But after a pause, she clarifies. It wasn't just the two of them. Watching the stream, she adds that it included him, her, and Miss Cat Thief. At Alice's house, everyone is busy cleaning. Alice is sweeping, Honoka is scrubbing the floor, and Harumi is helping place the pillows correctly. After a lot of hard work, Alice feels relaxed seeing the room now shining and well organized. With a smile, Honoka sighs in relief after the exhausting work, noting how much cleaner the room looks. Alice smiles in agreement, praising their efforts. She hastily apologizes for making Honoka help with the cleaning, but Honoka immediately stops her, saying it was no problem since she volunteered to help, so there's no need to worry. Harumi suddenly interrupts them, also looking tired from the hectic work. He teases Honoka, saying she wouldn't stop apologizing for her rude behavior the other day, assuring her that she acts like a samurai. Honoka shouts at him, reminding him that she warned him not to bring it up. As they tease each other like friends, they all start laughing. He settles near the sunken hearth, noticing its dirtiness in an otherwise clean room. A quick wipe reveals blackened ash and smoke residue. Since vacuum cleaners aren't suited for ash, the floor must be cleaned afterward. To protect the traditional tatami mat, they sprinkle well-squeezed tea leaves and gently sweep with a soft bristle broom. As he cleans the hearth, remarks that it feels surprisingly fresh when it's not burning, and as they're cleaning it once again, so naturally there's no fire burning. Alice looks at him in disbelief, covering her mouth with her hand and snickering at him, noting how fresh the ivory appears to him. He looks confused, not understanding the reason for her chuckle. Honoka, also in disbelief, explains that he sounds like an old man. Harumi changes the topic by asking if there's anything else they can help with, now that they're available, politely requesting her permission. She graciously declines, thanking them for already helping more than enough. Suddenly, Alice realizes there's still one more demanding task left to do. Leading them to the main task, she mentions the stair chest, and they inquire if she is referring to staircase storage furniture, to which she concurs, explaining that this stair drawer belonged to her grandma and was discovered at the rear of the room where her grandmother used to store her belongings in the past. She then asks for their thoughts on the fire room, which she finds a bit gloomy despite gradually adding more furniture to it. They agree, now understanding how the fireplace's appearance has changed. Standing at the room's doorway, she points out her plan to move the stair chest from this room to the fireplace area, but admits she can't manage it alone. Sliding the door of the room, she looks towards them with a polite smile and expresses gratitude for their presence, acknowledging it as a significant help. However, after a brief glance into the room, she abruptly shuts the door with a loud, unsettling noise, leaving them confused and startled by her sudden action. With some hesitation and deep in thought, she asks them to wait outside briefly because the room is in a chaotic state. Understanding her concern, they agree to wait. She hurriedly enters the room, and from outside, they hear various sounds of shifting and organizing objects. Suddenly, all the noises stop, causing them to worry about her well-being. They ask with concern if she is okay, and their anxiety increases when they hear her faintly calling for help. In a rush, they open the door forcefully, finding Alice lying on the floor covered with old boxes, only her hand visible. They rush to her aid, with Honoka removing the boxes and Harumi holding her hand to assist her. They ask her what happened, and after she grants permission, they lift her out of the pile of boxes, counting slowly to ensure a careful rescue. Her clothes are disheveled, and she coughs from the dust, apologizing to them for the ordeal. She expresses relief, feeling like she narrowly escaped a dangerous situation. After rescuing her, he is jolted in shock as he sees a hand approaching with a sharp crack. Honoka strikes him hard, sending him crashing down with tears and a hint of blood. Alice rushes over, concerned as he writhes in pain. Honoka apologizes, explaining it was an instinctive knife hand strike. Alice scolds her, warning that such moves can be dangerous. Lying on the ground, he mutters, wondering why he always ends up getting hit. After a few minutes, as they regain their composure, Alice holds a crate and apologizes to both. She clarifies that she unpacked only the essentials from her luggage, leaving the rest untouched, and hadn't realized how disorderly it remained. While helping her move drawers, Honoka apologizes again for hitting him. Seeing him looking better, he reassures them both that it was just an accident and there's no need to apologize. As they take and remove boxes, they finally uncover the stair chest. They are surprised at how lovely it looks and agree that it will enhance the beauty of the ivory room. However, they then notice the piles of files and boxes obstructing the drawer, creating tension as it will be difficult to move. With determination and hard work, they successfully shifted it into the fire room. They all express excitement and admire Alice's taste, noting how well it fits into the room. With the drawer in place, the room now looks exceptionally attractive. Alice expresses gratitude once again for their help. Harumi shifts the conversation, mentioning his hunger. Recognizing the time, Alice searches in the fireplace with tongs and retrieves something she desires to eat, a warm roasted sweet potato. With excitement, she instructs them to peel off the foil, splitting it into 2 pieces with steam rising from the hot potato. Both gazes eagerly at the potato, enticed by its delicious appearance and enticing aroma. Meanwhile, Harumi appears puzzled, noticing there's no fire in the hearth. Alice explains with confidence her process as she begins by burning wood to create sizable charcoal pieces, which she then covers with layers of ashes. After wrapping the sweet potato in kitchen paper and aluminum foil, she buries it nearby. This method ensures the fire continues burning slowly under the ashes, cooking the sweet potato at a gentle temperature. She also warns them to be cautious when burying the potatoes to avoid touching the charcoal, which can cause burns. With confidence, Alice proudly informs them that she had prepared everything before they began cleaning, ensuring they could enjoy the meal afterward. Hearing this, he teasingly mentions that she can eat without worries again today, as now she's truly worked up a sweat. She playfully shouts at him to stop teasing her. Amid their friendly banter, Honoka looks confused, not quite understanding their conversation. They sit on the bench with their potatoes beside them, taking a moment to pray before eating. Alice takes a bite of her warm potato, savoring its deliciousness. Glancing at Honoka, she notices that Honoka has already finished hers. Alice understands the appeal of sweets after a day's work, knowing that sweet potatoes become even sweeter when cooked slowly at a low temperature. With her hand over her mouth, still filled with potato, Honoka gazes admiringly at the drawer once more, noting how adorable it looks. Harumi then asks if she's particularly fond of it, to which she explains that it's wonderful and fits perfectly in the room. Honoka asks if the drawer originally belonged in that spot. Harumi is surprised to hear her, realizing she remembers its history well. She explains that it came to her mind after they moved the drawer there, and she further recalls how he used to climb up on it all the time and get scolded. He agrees but interrupts, reminding her that she once fell from it and got a nosebleed. Alice looks at him for confirmation, and Honoka, who doesn't remember this, also looks puzzled. Harumi reassures them that he clearly remembers it. Alice appears confused as she can't recall these events. Harumi explains that she had already moved out by then, and it was when Honoka moved to the town. Now, understanding why she doesn't remember, Alice asks Honoka if she's not originally from there. Honoka agrees and explains that she lived in Yokohama before kindergarten. Honoka further informs him that at that time the eyrie wasn't being used anymore, and since he was small, he probably doesn't remember. Alice also agrees with her. Harumi teases her, saying she must be remembering it wrong because he was never that much of a kid. He adds it's funny she says this after nearly killing him with her karate move. Frustrated, she reminds him it was unintentional and asks him not to hold it against her. Alice smiles at their conversation, thinking Honoka is making a convenient excuse. She interrupts, telling them to stop arguing, and suggests they can climb the stair chest as much as they like since it'll be at the back of the room. Both immediately shout that they won't do it because they're not kids anymore. Alice laughs, saying she was just joking. Harumi continues teasing, mentioning that Alice once fell and got a nosebleed. According to their grandma, she looks confused. As they all sit and reflect on the past. The next morning, Harumi visits and places a small box filled with pesticides into a hole in the wall with a dull thud. He informs her that for now, they'll leave it there and warns her that the poison won't work immediately. She bows respectfully, thanking him for his help and apologizing for always bothering him. She trembles with frustration, noting that these pesky critters are showing up everywhere. He explains that animals seek warmth in the cold season, making it common for them to enter houses. Distressed, she protests, not wanting them inside. The intruders, rats, pose serious risks, causing damage and spreading diseases like food poisoning. He advises using poison or calling professionals immediately. He suggests that if she wants to keep the mice away, she could always get a cat. She seems to agree with him but appears confused at the mention of a cat. He guesses she might not like them, but she denies without giving a reason. Sensing her hesitation, he changes the subject and explains other ways to deal with the problem. As a last resort, he suggests calling Grandpa, who can handle the situation. She finds this suggestion reassuring. He then sits down to put on his shoes, preparing to leave because Grandpa needs his help. Understanding this, she apologizes for bothering him when he's busy. He smiles, waves goodbye, and she thanks him once more. As she watches him walk away, she feels a pang of sadness, contemplating his suggestion about getting a cat. Closing the door with a heavy thud, she ponders the idea of using a cat to keep the mice away but feels unsure about getting one. Lost in thought, she turns back and finds a black and white cat comfortably seated on the mat near the aviary. It wakes up with a stretch and meets her gaze, causing her to quickly look away, feeling uneasy under its stare. The cat nonchalantly returns to its original position and resumes sleeping, indifferent to her presence. She is filled with worry, unsure of what to do with the cat that seems to be at home in her house as if it owns the place, despite her uncertainty about how it got inside with the door locked. Determined to act, she quietly lowers herself to the floor near the cat, handling the mat carefully from the corners to avoid waking it or causing it to flee. She carefully pulls the cushion towards the main door without waking the cat, opens it quietly, and gently places it outside with a sense of melancholy. The cat wakes up and walks outside, casting hopeful glances at her. She feels helpless, knowing she can't keep it in her home. She watches with a sense of resignation until it disappears behind the house. As she turns back, she washes the dishes and dries her hands with a kitchen towel. She wonders if the unmoving cat belongs to a neighbor or if it's just an unusually friendly stray. Though she feels guilty for kicking it out, she knows keeping it would be a problem. Remembering she left the cushion outside, she goes to retrieve it, only to find the same cat comfortably sitting on it again. She shouts in confusion as she had just pushed the cat out of her house. It feels like a dream, but determined not to let the creature stay, she pushes it out again and immediately locks the door with a sharp sound, hoping it won't return. However, her hopes are dashed when she sees the cat back in the aviary room, licking its paws. Now annoyed and finding the situation creepy, she sharply runs towards the cat to chase it out, but the effort leaves her exhausted. She stumbles in front of the cat, looking helpless as she tries unsuccessfully to persuade it to leave. She wonders if the cat has returned from some hidden spot, perhaps the wall. Feeling a mix of sadness and sweat on her face, she pleads with the cat to go away on its own, only to be stunned when it seems to mock her with laughter. Suddenly, Harumi-kun appears behind her and calls the cat by its name, Engawa. He apologizes for entering her house without permission, explaining it's common in the countryside where doors often remain unlocked. She is surprised, thinking Harumi-kun went home recently, but he corrects her, saying it was 3 hours ago. Shocked, she asks if he knows the cat, wondering if it belongs to someone or is lost. He explains that the cat is a stray that often visited when his grandmother was alive and has been doing so for years. He expresses concern as he hasn't seen it since his grandmother passed away. Understanding the story, she looks at the cat with newfound affection and emotion. He diverts her attention by informing her that his grandpa told him to bring her a gift. With great excitement, he opens the bag with a loud rustle, revealing a rainbow trout, a classic catch from mountain stream fishing in winter. He further explains that there's a regulated fishing area nearby where anyone can fish even in winter. Despite the cold, he managed to catch many fish but found carrying them all back quite challenging. According to Moriyama Harunobu, Harumi's 73-year-old grandfather, a 10th Dan black belt in karate and skilled in other works, he finds winter fishing is a romantic pursuit for true men, despite the seasonal ban on stream fishing. As she listens, she clasps her hands in a prayer-like gesture, her thoughts on his grandpa, then bows quickly with a swift sound of rushing, expressing heartfelt thanks each time. Harumi doesn't grasp who she's praying for. He then hands her the fish bag. The cat emits a loud, demanding sound for food, sharply moving its paw towards the bag, eager for fish as well. Harumi remarks it's hungry for trout, calling it greedy. She laughs heartily, resigned to her fate now that she must care for the cat as her grandmother did. Now she begins preparing the fish by gutting and scaling it, followed by a thorough rinse with water. Using metal skewers, she carefully pierces the fish through both sides, ensuring it remains stable and doesn't slip during cooking. Metal skewers ensure even cooking by conducting heat efficiently, speeding up the process. After skewering, she sprinkles salt over the fish. Winter's natural osmotic pressure removes excess water and odors effortlessly, and the fins can be removed as needed. She also salts the fins but advises skipping the salt if preparing the fish for a cat, instead removing small bones and breaking it into pieces. Positioning the skewer slightly away from the flame, she lets it cook for 20 to 30 minutes until the water stops dripping from inside. She feels excited, savoring the ultimate Irori cooking experience. For her, moments like these are simply the best. Glancing at the cat stretching and demanding food, she assures it that the meal will be ready shortly. While sitting in front of Harumi, she unintentionally begins to twitch and gently pat Engawa. It also relaxes as she taps it. Suddenly, with a hint of fear, she withdraws her hand, making a light sound. Perplexed, he looks at her and asks if she doesn't like cats. Emotionally, she explains that it's not that she dislikes cats, rather, when she starts touching them, she becomes attached. He still looks puzzled, not seeing attaching to cats as a bad thing. She reluctantly mentions that the lifespan of these little creatures is much shorter than hers, so she knows this cat will likely be gone before her. After understanding her intention, he is left speechless. Then he asks her to look at him while he gently taps the cat. As he nears touching it, the cat gives him a wary look. He points out the cat's cautious demeanor, noting that other than Grandma, the pet wouldn't allow anyone else to pet it. Perhaps Engawa feels lonely since Grandma's passing, but now with Alice here, it seems less lonely and is sleeping so peacefully. Alice grasps the situation and begins to pet it with deep affection and love, while he watches her with a fond smile. Suddenly, Alice recalls something, promptly folds her hands, and instructs Engawa that since it's here, it's its duty to take care of the mice, and she'll pay rent. Harumi appreciates her decision, acknowledging it's not a small commitment. A few days after cleaning her home and freeing herself from being stuck under boxes, it's a fresh morning. Alice stands outside the house with Moriyama and Harumi alongside a loader van. Grandpa pushes the door open with a loud creak and clack as the stiff lock gives way. Alice steps inside, amazed by the interior. He explains that his nephew's family once lived in the main building but has since moved out, leaving the barn as a warehouse. Alice admires its cozy atmosphere, and Moriyama agrees, having refurbished it by upgrading the dirt floor and adding a loft and an upper level. Harumi teases his grandpa, suggesting that it would be an easy job if he asked for help, to which the seasoned man replies that it's easier said than done. Originally, the barn was used to store farm equipment like hoes, seeding baskets, and carts. Hence, it only had a dirt floor. Grandpa assures Alice that there's plenty of room for her luggage here, though she appears unsure about using the space. He solemnly reminds her of the seriousness, recounting how she'd almost had a mishap with her belongings, as Harumi confirms. She starts to explain, but he changes the subject, reassuring her to disregard his ramblings and accept their hospitality. With a warm smile, he assures her they're happy to assist her. Then he tells Harumi he's heading to the field and advises him to help her move her luggage. She thanks him sincerely, bowing in gratitude. Harumi experiences a strong sense of familiarity in this moment. Both of them are shifting a huge wooden drawer, which appears very heavy. She asks if he is okay, and he confirms that he is fine. When she notices him carrying 2 crates at a time, she worries whether he can manage that much and might trip. However, he reassures her again, saying he is not a kid anymore. Smiling, she apologizes, explaining that she still sees him as a small child in her mind. She instructs him to watch the floor, as it is dangerous. Working and shifting the heavy luggage makes them hot, so they remove their jackets. Seeing him carry 2 crates at a time, she decides to try it too. However, she quickly feels discomfort, realizing they are heavier than she thought, and she begins to sway unsteadily, almost dropping them. Harumi easily takes the crates from her with one hand while holding a chair in the other, advising her not to overdo it and that carrying 1 crate at a time is fine. While shifting luggage, she gets excited when he finds a small box and is amazed that Grandma kept it. Alice finds the moment sentimental and is surprised when she opens the box to find something he usually keeps. Both agree that Grandma Minase was a wealthy woman. When they open the box, he is astonished to find a baby shirt with Harumi's name on it. Alice takes the shirt from him, excited by how cute it is, but she wonders why Grandma kept it all these years. Harumi looks confused by the small shirt. Alice holds the tiny shirt in front of him, laughing, and says she was just thinking about how much he has grown. To her, his little cute image still feels more natural. He doesn't respond. She teases him again, saying he can still wear this cute shirt. He playfully snatches the shirt from her with great effort. After shifting all the luggage, They try to escape the cold weather. Alice starts shivering and remarks that it's still freezing even with the door shut. Harumi agrees, noting that they didn't notice the cold earlier because they were moving around. He suggests it's time to leave, as they left their coats in the car, and Alice is feeling very cold. He tries to open the door, but it makes a heavy sound and doesn't budge. He makes several attempts with great effort but to no avail. Alice looks tense, but he reassures her that the door's lock is just a bit stiff. Frustrated, he mutters that it's useless to keep trying since it won't budge. Seeing her worried expression, he relaxes and says he'll just call Grandpa to open it from the outside. When he checks his pocket for his phone, he realizes it's in the car. He asks Alice if she has a cell phone, but she says she doesn't, surprising him since it's unusual not to have one these days. Shivering, she asks if there's another way out. Although there isn't, he reassures her that Grandpa only went to the fields and will be back soon, which eases her worries a bit. However, he adds that Grandpa will return by evening, and it's only 12:15 now. They both decide to search for something to keep warm and rush towards the luggage, hoping to find something useful among the items. After searching, Alice finally finds a large blanket and shows it with great excitement. However, their joy turns to concern when they realize there's only one blanket. They both insist the other take it, holding onto it tightly and pushing it towards each other. Finally, Alice angrily orders him to use the blanket, which he reluctantly accepts under the condition that they switch every 5 minutes. She reassures him that she's fine and doesn't need his worry, though she's shivering from the cold. Seeing his concerned expression, she smiles and assures him she's okay, emphasizing her maturity. He looks at her sadly, then suddenly drapes his blanket over her shoulders as well. She's puzzled by his gesture, while Harumi feels awkward and foolish about his impulsive action, realizing it reinforces her view of him as childish. He stops himself from dwelling on it, acknowledging their urgent need. If he hadn't acted, Alice would never have agreed to the blanket. Remembering Grandpa's warning about the risk of their body temperatures dropping, they wrap themselves up in the blanket as a first precaution. He apologizes for any perception of him as immature, trying not to let it bother him. Now they both share the blanket together. He tries to calm his thoughts by remembering they got locked inside while helping Onee-San with her luggage. Suddenly he shivers at his own actions and scolds himself out loud, prompting her to ask if he's okay. He reassures her, though he's visibly confused. She points out that his hand on her shoulder is hurting her. Flustered, he quickly apologizes and removes his hand in a jerky manner. He recalls how, in his rush to cover her with the blanket, he had placed his hand on her shoulder. When he comes back to his senses, he freezes, realizing his hand is still there. Feeling extremely awkward, he apologizes repeatedly, his face turning blue with embarrassment, and begins to pull the blanket back, insisting that he didn't mean anything by it and was just following Grandpa's instructions to keep warm. Alice looks at him, understanding the situation, and relaxes, assuring him that she knows it was necessary. She then apologizes for being stubborn about not taking the blanket earlier, but he reassures her that it's totally fine. In a quiet voice, she admits she wasn't expecting this situation. He agrees, and they both laugh informally about their actions. He tries to maintain as much distance as possible from her under the blanket, creating an awkward silence. The tension makes the situation feel uncomfortable. Harumi struggles to find the right words to break the silence, but Alice speaks up first. She mentions that despite it being winter, they might be sweating from the cleaning. She apologizes awkwardly if she smells due to sweating. Her question seems unbelievable to him. He quickly reassures her that she doesn't smell bad. Turning toward her with a smile, he unintentionally compliments her, saying that her scent is actually very pleasant. Realizing what he just said, he immediately turns away, trying to clarify that he didn't mean it like that. Alice looks at him with great affection, while he feels embarrassed and awkward for unintentionally complimenting her, his face flushed with sweat. In this awkward situation, they suddenly hear a heavy sound, prompting both to shout loudly. Harumi's grandpa, realizing something is wrong, calls out if they are still in the barn. They confirm their presence with loud voices, explaining that the door won't open. Understanding the gravity of the situation, he considers it a serious issue and tells them to wait a few minutes while he makes a strong effort to open the door. When he finally opens it, he finds them sitting dejectedly, holding their heads in their hands. He inquires if they have broken something or if dealing with the luggage has worn them out. Both of them explain that, while they are exhausted, this is not the cause of their distress. After a long and tiring day, they finally arrive at Alice's home, both feeling quite hungry. Alice prepares a meal on the stove, and there is a bubbling sound of something cooking in liquid. When she lifts the pot's lid, the aroma intensifies their appetite. The dish is pork miso soup, which differs from regular miso soup by the addition of pork, giving it a unique flavor. The sound of the liquid from the pork adds to the anticipation. Alice mentions that Harumi once told her he could hang a pot above the eyrie to make soup. Since it's quite cold today, she had planned to prepare it ahead of time so they could all enjoy it later. She serves him a bowl of the soup, and although Harumi doesn't recall the conversation, he tells her that Grandpa has already left. He advises her not to worry about him, as he had a hunting trip planned, which couldn't be avoided. Instead of a formal meeting, it was more like a feast. They first say a prayer to thank the Lord for the meal. Despite the soup being very hot, Alice starts eating it with chopsticks, taking small sips as she's too hungry to wait. After finishing her meal, she expresses a deep sense of relief. Noticing his reaction to the soup, she smiles and remarks on how it warms him up. He agrees but reminds her that she was also freezing. She nods, reflecting on the unexpected day and the surprise of being locked in the barn. Playfully, she teases him about how startled she was when he covered her with the blanket, leading to a light-hearted chopstick duel with soft clinking sounds. As they laugh, Ngoa enters, coughing and recalling the incident, explaining it was an emergency. Though she acknowledges the seriousness, she keeps teasing him about how impulsive he was. Then, holding Ngoa affectionately, she asks for its opinion. He apologizes, feeling awkward, but she reassures him with a smile, saying that despite everything, he's grown into a reliable and impressive person. She admits her surprise at how things turned out, and Ngoa meows in agreement. He notes that both she and the cat are teasing him, but the cat meows to assert it's not teasing. After a friendly exchange, he thanks her for the meal and leaves, while she reminds him to pass along her thanks to Grandpa. Leaving Alice's house with a bag in hand, he steps into the clear, moonlit night. As he walks, he reflects on Alice's consistent behavior, which is both comforting and slightly frustrating. He scolds himself for overthinking by giving himself a gentle tap on the head. Realizing how cold it is, he hurries home. Meanwhile, Alice sits on the cushion with Ngoa, recalling their awkward moments. She tells her cat that it has been a long time since someone embarrassed her like that, and she's surprised by how it unfolded this time.
Here I am.